Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well and I hope you enjoyed the Bahrain Grand Prix. That is right, one of 23 race weekends has already been ticked off the Formula 1 calendar. So here are my 3 winners and 3 losers from the Bahrain Grand Prix. I think there's nowhere else we can start other than talking about Fernando Alonso, the man who has put an Aston Martin car on the podium in the first race of the 2023 season. He absolutely smashed it out of the park. He was drama encapsulated. Every single storyline will be about Fernando Alonso coming away from this Grand Prix. He was phenomenal. And just looking at Aston Martin, there was so much hype around the team after the winter test. There was so much hype around how many steps forward they'd managed to make. And then there was also the hype around Fernando Alonso coming into the team as well. Was it just going to be a sideways step from Alpine to Aston Martin? Was he going to be able to deliver in this Aston Martin car? And all of those questions were answered Saturday on qualifying, puts himself on the 3rd row, 5th on the grid. And everybody was like, okay, that's qualifying, but can they do it in the race? A slow start did drop him out of the top 6 to begin with. And we kind of all breathed a sigh and we were like, oh, that's a real shame, because we thought Aston Martin might have been able to break into that top 3 teams and maybe not this time around because the race pace wasn't quite there. We were completely wrong. Fernando Alonso then just turned it on. He was in 7th place, battling with George Russell, and we thought, oh, maybe he'll be able to get in front of one of the Mercedes, break into that top 6. He then blew us out of the water, got in front of George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz. They all fell by the wayside to Fernando Alonso, picked up a podium, looked incredibly quick on the hard compound tyre, and not only that, had the best tyre degradation, probably outside of the Red Bull team, and therefore this Aston Martin package just looks so good going into this year. My first loser, though, has to be Charles Leclerc coming out of this Bahrain Grand Prix weekend. You have to remember 12 months ago, he was standing on the top step of the podium in Bahrain. We were talking about him possibly being a title contender for the 2022 season. It wasn't too bad in quali, got himself on the 2nd row just behind both Red Bulls. We were like, maybe the Ferrari's race pace will still be there. Maybe we'll see another battle between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen like we did 1 year ago. But he just couldn't even hold on to Perez, let alone Max Verstappen. He was nowhere near the Red Bulls, and reliability strikes again at Ferrari. All of the talk was about how this Ferrari engine might be more reliable in 2023 because they'd spent the winter break trying to get over those reliability issues, and then in the first Grand Prix of the entire season, it falls apart for Charles Leclerc when he was guaranteed a podium position. He was definitely going to finish ahead of Fernando Alonso in 3rd place, and not only that, they actually replaced a few electrical components in Parc Fermé between qualifying and the race. That's 1 power unit down already for Charles Leclerc. And with 22 races and 6 sprint races left in this season, it already looks like Charles Leclerc is going to be taking engine penalty after engine penalty. And we know how much that can affect your overall score in Formula 1 when you have to fight through that midfield battle, especially when it's looking as competitive as it is this year. And whilst it might be competitive in the midfield, it does not look competitive right at the top of the championship. It looks like Max Verstappen might run away with it again in 2023. He was incredibly quick and has to go down as my 2nd winner from the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend. Probably one of the most dominant performances you are going to see in Formula 1. One of the easiest performances you are going to see in Formula 1. He just made it look so comfortable out there, all by himself for the entire Grand Prix. He was just untouchable again, and it's one of those things where somebody needs to tell him that it's a brand new season. He's just carried that form from 2022 into 2023 and just looks like he hasn't taken a break whatsoever from Formula 1 since November. He came into this season, everybody else looks a little bit rusty here and there. Everybody else needed a few laps to get into the rhythm of it. Not Max Verstappen. He just flew away from everybody else and disappeared into the distance. And the thing is, I'm now thinking, it's 1 down. There's 22 races to go. He managed to get 15 wins this season. I'd love to know in the comments down below, how many of these 23 races in 2023 do you think Max Verstappen can actually win? Does he beat his own record and go even better than 15 wins this season? And a 1-2 for Red Bull to boot. Sergio Perez finishing in 2nd place, again comfortably in 2nd place ahead of everybody else. Nowhere near Max Verstappen, don't get me wrong, but comfortably in 2nd place, and Red Bull taking the maximum amount of points that they could from this weekend, apart from the fastest lap point that Zhou Guanyu kind of sneakily took away from Pierre Gasly right at the end there. But overall, an incredible weekend for Red Bull, an incredibly dominant weekend for Red Bull. A 1-2 lockout in qualifying, a 1-2 lockout in the race. Is anyone going to get anywhere close? It certainly doesn't look like Mercedes are going to get close anyway. They have to go down as my second losers. There was a lot of positivity coming into 2023. Lewis Hamilton was saying how happy he was with the car design moving forward. He felt like the team had taken massive steps forward over the winter break. George Russell also saying he felt fairly comfortable in the car when they first tested it out. They were first getting to grips with the car itself. They were seemingly making really positive steps forward for this 2023 season. And it wasn't the best qualifying, don't get me wrong, finishing in 6th and 7th, but the Mercedes car wasn't great in qualifying last year either. Towards the second half of the season, though, it really came to life in the races. You know, I'm thinking of Lewis Hamilton picking up multiple second-place finishes, George Russell getting a win under his belt towards the end of the year as well in Brazil. Like, the Mercedes just seemed to grow and grow in 2022, and I thought they might be able to carry some of that momentum into 2023. That absolutely did not happen. They just could not live with Aston Martin. George Russell finishing behind Lance Stroll in 6th and 7th respectively, and then Lewis Hamilton finishing behind Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso getting a podium, Lewis Hamilton having to settle for 5th place. Both Aston Martins beat their respective Mercedes cars, and the fact that a customer team is outdoing the works team in Formula 1 does not happen very often, and they are not happy about it. Mercedes even came out after the race saying that they feel like they're the 4th fastest car behind Red Bull, Ferrari, and now Aston Martin are seemingly breaking their way into this top 3, and Mercedes are just continuing to fall backwards. It is not looking good for Mercedes right now. My third and final winner from the Bahrain Grand Prix, though, and I've gone a little bit left field here, maybe. I've gone for Alex Albon. Maybe not the obvious pick, considering the other drivers that also finished in the points, but I think compared to the expectation versus reality of what we got from Williams, I think everybody I spoke to had Williams 10th in their constructor standings. I think everybody I spoke to had Alex Albon sort of 17th or lower in their driver standings predictions, and he absolutely smashed it out of the park. Alex Albon was incredible in 2022, don't get me wrong, but picking up a point in a Williams car on the first race of the season in 2023, I was very, very impressed. Not only that, Logan Sargent also wasn't too far off the pace, finished up in 12th place behind Alex Albon, a couple of other problems towards the front, and maybe Logan Sargent could have picked up some points as well. But I think the fact that that Williams car is so quick in a straight line is going to be so helpful to them defending their positions over the course of the season. Maybe if they can get a little bit better in qualifying, Logan Sargent just missing out on Q2 yesterday, Alex Albon doing a good job but not quite getting into Q3. It'll be close with Williams, but I think if they can take steps forward, and like basically anything other than 10th in the constructor standings is a massive step forwards for Williams. And whilst we mentioned 10th place in the constructor standings, let's talk about my last loser from the Bahrain Grand Prix, which is McLaren Formula 1. It was just tragic. I think the word tragic is the word I'm going to go for. Oscar Piastri only took part in 13 laps of his opening Grand Prix for the McLaren team in Bahrain, plagued by issues. An electronics issue they thought they could maybe put right by changing the wheel. He's then sat in the pits for ages. It's just a little bit embarrassing when you're trying to get the wheel working and everybody is watching you and you just can't quite get it right. That must have been horrible for Oscar Piastri to go through. And then on top of that, your main driver in Lando Norris, who'd done so well to qualify in 11th place, looked like he might have been on for some points, got ahead of Nico Hülkenberg early on in the Grand Prix, was running in 10th place, was then plagued by pneumatic problems. 5 pit stops over the course of the Grand Prix, basically 1 every 10 laps for Lando Norris, is atrocious. They just could not seem to fix it, could not seem to get it right. They just had to keep topping up that McLaren car, and I don't know what they could have learned from that. Lando Norris really upset after the Grand Prix, not happy with the performance whatsoever. He said the only positive that he can take away from this weekend is that they got a lot of pit stop practice for the mechanics. It was just awful. Rounding out with a few honourable mentions, definitely could have mentioned Valtteri Bottas as a winner, comfortably finished in the points in that Alfa Romeo car. Also could have mentioned Pierre Gasly as he also picked up points on his first Grand Prix for the Alpine team. Almost got fastest lap of the Grand Prix as well. They were snuck away by Zhou Guanyu to make sure that Alfa Romeo were ahead of AlphaTauri in the standings. But that was very sneaky from Alfa Romeo. But Pierre Gasly won't mind too much because he picked up a couple of points on his debut for Alpine, whilst Esteban Ocon had a terrible time, which definitely could have gone down as a loser as well. Esteban Ocon, the fact that he got so many penalties, 3 different time penalties over the course of the Grand Prix, which kept adding up as well. And I think eventually he just kind of sacked it off and was like, I can't be bothered anymore. And Alpine were like, well, the car's fine, you know, you can still keep going. And Esteban was just like, nah, can't be bothered. My final honourable mention could have been Haas, definitely could have been a loser over the course of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Nico Hülkenberg starting in the points positions, qualified in 10th place, and then just fell backwards over the course of the Grand Prix. Kevin Magnussen also starting on the hard compound tyre. That strategy didn't work. Haas just kind of didn't have the race pace we expected from them in this 2023 season, and therefore they found themselves in this no man's land at the back of the pack. There we have it though, the first Grand Prix of the 2023 season is ticked off, 22 races to go. Is anybody really going to be able to catch Max Verstappen? I certainly hope so. And are we going to see Fernando Alonso get his 33rd win in Formula One? It's looking closer and closer to happening. Maybe we just need something to go wrong for Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez. Fernando Alonso could slip in there top of the podium. I'd love to know what you think. Who are your winners and losers from the Bahrain Grand Prix? Let me know in the comments down below. Whilst you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you next time.